Good evening and welcome to the IHSN Spotlight Conversation. This is our first one ever and we're excited about this opportunity. I'm Tim Smith. I'll be hosting tonight, and joining me tonight will be Chester Goad. And Chester, first I want to thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. It's an honor to be here.
Chester has a lot to say and a lot of good information, and also I think you're going to find that he has a lot to add to the conversation for some of our work to try to improve things in the state, in the community, and he has a nonprofit that he's very fond of, and we're going to get to all of that. First, we want to get to know Chester, get to know Chester's story, how he came to this nonprofit, and what that's about. So that's our goals this evening. We want to educate you on something that's called servrstrong.us. That's on the website, servrstrong.us, and we'll talk about how we get there, but we're going to start from the beginning, all right?
The very beginning.
The very beginning. I'm working on my journalism skills here.
Okay.
And so, Chester, you're an Oneida native.
I am.
So talk to me a little about folks will say, now who's he related to around here?
Yeah,
so
yeah,
who are
yeah.
you related to around here?
So I moved here in the 4th grade, but my family's all from up in here. My dad's side of the family especially. My dad was Servr Goad. He taught at the vocational school here for many years until he passed away. And his dad was Marion Goad, Reverend Marion Goad. And they had the little white house up on the highway up here, Highway 27 across from the railroad tracks. I think now it may be like a timber company. It's next to a used car business up there. That's where we would always go for Sunday dinner after church and things like that. So yeah, and I went to Oneida High School and was very active there, and have been plugged into the community pretty much ever since. Even though I've been gone for a pretty long time, I've stayed connected with everybody.
So in high school, and that's where we met. We've known each other ever since high school, and you grew up in the shadow of the goalposts of M.E. Thompson Field,
I
right?
sure did, yeah. You could stand out there and watch anything going on out on the field out there, so that was fun.
So what was that like Friday night, before you were in the band? What was that like on Friday nights, having that going on? Did that
it was fun.
Just seem normal?
Yeah, it was absolutely normal. You would just go out onto the back deck and you could pay attention to whatever was going on. You know, it was a lot of fun, actually.
So were you a sports fan at the time, or?
I wouldn't say a huge sports fan. I was an Oneida fan, and you know, there's just a little bit of a difference. You know, I was truly a loyal Indian, I guess you could say. So I was involved in all manner of things, and our community, there's something really special about it that it really just everybody's excited about it. You know, I remember the days growing up when we were raising money to save our school. You know, and all of that, and there's just something about everybody in our community is really invested in each other and in the schools, and it was just special. So
talk a little bit about, I know it had a huge role in shaping my high school experience, my middle school and high school experience, about the Oneida High School Band. What did it provide for you? What was the great thing about it?
Well, I think growing up as a creative, I was involved, you know, with the yearbook and journalism, the newspaper, all those different things, but also Scholars Bowl. Remember Scholars Bowl? I was involved in all those things, but the band was a great place to meet other people who were kind of creative, a little different. We were all quirky, you know, and it was just a cool place to connect. We had a great time, and honestly, I think we had a great band back then. Yeah. So,
what were some teachers, even band directors, that you feel like brought that creative out of you, that encouraged it? Because a lot of times in school, especially in the 80s, the creativity was starting to be diminished a little bit. I mean, we still had art shows and things like that, but creativity wasn't exactly encouraged everywhere you went.
I think some of the earliest things, though, we were talking about saving our school. Remember when we would have the variety shows? Yes. And everybody got to do a lot of creative things with that. I remember running around as a chicken in between the different scenes at the variety show, and I was dressed in a chicken costume with a good friend of ours, and we would run across the stage, you know, so that was a taste of that. This is fun. But I would say, you know, as I got older, probably, if you're a creative person, sometimes you can get a little trouble in class and things like that, and so I would tend to do that just a little bit. And I would say Mary Ann Brewster was probably the best person who helped contain that. And you know, true story, she figured out, I'm going to put a chair in the front of the room, I'm going to give Chester the first 5 minutes of class. 5 minutes, that's pretty good. And she said, I'm going to give you the first 5 minutes of class, and this is going to be Chester's Corner. You're going to get it all out. You're going to tell us any story you want to tell us. You're going to make us laugh, and then it's my time after that, you know. And I did that. I had her multiple times for German and English, you know, and so she knew how to kind of contain that creativity. I'd say the person who knew how to produce from my creativity was probably Don Goforth. And just in all the different ways, he knew that there were people who just had kind of an energy about them that wanted to be creative, and he really capitalized on that. He was a great teacher.
So high school can be great times, it can be bad times.
Yeah.
So what are some memories that stick out, or if it's a singular memory, let's start with the good. What's the best high school memory you have from a night of high school, or one of the best, if you could grab one out?
Yeah. Oh man, I would say being involved in like student council was probably the best. I was all about, you know, being a part of, you know, doing fun things, but also in my mind, I felt like, you know, we can change the world as the student council, you know, and be involved in school. I think that's probably my favorite memory. And then band, of course, you know.
What about a bad memory from high school, a harsh memory that?
I remember back in the day, I don't even remember the cause of it, but I remember there was a student protest. I remember being involved in that student protest, and I remember Cheryl Butler, who was also my Scholars Bowl coach at the time, yelling from the upstairs window, "Chester Goad, you get back in here. You're representing your school. You don't need to be doing this." And I remember that was a very weird time in our community.
Yeah, I mean, and I do remember. I believe it was when there was a change from principal.
Okay, yes.
Wasn't going to be principal anymore.
Yes, and the students were in an uproar.
What'd you do? Miss Butler's very forceful. Did you go back to class, or did you go to the protest?
No, I trucked on over to the gym for the sit-in in the Oneida gym. So,
which didn't work.
It didn't work.
Just for the record.
They came and ran us all out
right.
eventually. And, yeah.
All right. So, how often do you get back?
Pretty often. I would say definitely holidays and things like that, and maybe a little more than that.
What about when you come back to town? Here, I got to do this. What do you got to do?
Before, I really always wanted to stop at Phillips's, you know, either for pizza or hot fudge cake from Phillips Drive-In.
Right.
You know, that was always something I was like, I got to do that while I'm here. But the hours are a little different now, and so I have to catch it carefully, you know. But I always like to drive through. I always drive through the school, even though the buildings have changed. I drive through the school. I drive through where I grew up,
right.
And just kind of check that out. I always take a little trek down Main Street. It's pretty nostalgic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm big on nostalgia myself.
Yeah.
That kind of thing.
Yeah.
So, all right. So you decide you're going to graduate. You graduate in 1990.
I do.
Coming off a pretty good football season, right?
Yes.
They had.
It was
you
a
went
great year.
Deep into the playoffs.
Yes.
Almost. What was that like? You almost went to the state championship game. Were you all ready for that?
Yeah. Were we ready for it?
Were you excited about it? Thought of it?
Yeah.
It just didn't happen.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but it was a great year. Like you say, they've decided to build the schools.
Yeah.
There's a lot of school spirit. You make a decision on where you're going to go. Where'd you go?
Where to go to school?
Yes. Where was the
so
next step?
I got up out of here and went to Roan State first. And the reason for that was because when I was in middle school, I was a part of the Upper Bound program. And as an 8th grader, went to Upper Bound, and I realized a whole world was open out there of things to do. You know, when you grow up in a rural community, you really don't know everything that's out there. You know, you think you do, but you really don't. We're in a little microcosm sometimes. Right. And so I went to Roan State and just really enjoyed that, and I thought, I want to be a part of that. And so then when I graduated high school, I was like, I want to go to Roan State. It was, again, nostalgic for me. It was something I knew, I was familiar with. So I went to Roan State, had a great time. It was great. And then after that, went to Tennessee Tech University.
Did you know when you graduated what you wanted to do?
I knew I wanted to be in education, but I didn't really know what I wanted to do and how I wanted to do that.
So how did that narrow down when you got to Tech? How did you decide? Was it going to be high school, middle school, elementary, whatever?
Yeah, honestly, I couldn't tell you. I could not tell you. I did have a lot of fond memories of high school teachers, and I kind of thought it would be cool to be that for someone. I had, like I said, 2 or 3 really good teachers that really poured into me and were very real with me. about everything, and I thought I could do that.
So I'm going to try to go in order, but I don't know the answer to this question.
Okay.
Did you meet your wife in college?
I did.
All right,
yeah,
let's
yeah,
go there.
Yeah.
Then. Talk to me about your wife's name is Joy?
Joy, yes. And I met Joy at Tennessee Tech University. We actually, the first time I saw my wife was she was a homecoming candidate for the Baptist, now it's Baptist Collegiate Ministries, then it was BSU. And I followed her over to the BSU, and I was like, hey, I just voted for you over the BSU. And she's like, yeah, great, thanks. It's just kind of this weird thing. But anyway, we met at the Baptist Student Union, decided we liked each other. Her parents met there, interestingly enough, and her grandparents also met in Cookeville as well. Her grandfather played football for Tennessee Tech for a little while. So yeah, so we're definitely a Tech family.
So now, what was her major at that time?
Education, elementary education,
Okay.
really K-12 SPED, I think, is what she did. So.
Okay. So you guys are both in education. You're both at Tech.
Yes.
And walk us through that. Did you graduate first? Did you get married first? What
Okay,
was the
she's
order?
smarter than me.
Okay.
Okay, so we graduated high school at the same time. We did not graduate college at the same time. So I was a kept man for a little while. And she took care of me, made sure I had all the things I needed. No, but she was ahead of me. She's super smart. She was so ahead of me that she graduated with her undergrad in 3 years and got her master's degree and was already out teaching before I ever graduated with my undergrad.
So now you didn't stay teaching. What was your first job?
So my first job was teaching. I taught for White County High School. I taught high school English, primarily senior English, with a section here or there of like honors sophomores and things like that. But
And was she in Sparta too, or?
so let's see. When I was teaching for White County Schools, she was already in Cumberland County Schools.
Okay.
This is actually Joy's 30th year teaching in Cumberland County School Systems. I've bounced around.
Yeah.
I've done lots of different things.
Well, let's
so.
follow the bounce. After
Okay.
White County, where?
Yes, so I was invited to join the staff of a congressman in our area, Congressman Van Hillary. And so I joined his staff as, let's see, at first I was field representative and then I became projects director for him. And did that until he decided to run for governor. That wasn't successful, and so I moved on. Started working as the dean of students for a private academy down in Nashville called Curry Ingram Academy. And I did that for a little while until my mother was terminal, and I knew that I needed to be closer to her, more available to her, so I did that. And then I ended up at Roane State.
So now, did I read you were 35 when your mother passed away?
My mom passed away in 2006, so I think that would be correct. Yeah. Yes.
I'm going from the blog. I don't.
Yeah.
I'm not, I tried to study.
The blog
up a
is probably
bit.
better because if you ask me off the cuff, I may not remember.
But your
yeah.
dad had passed away.
Yes, my dad died when Corbin was not quite 1 year old.
Okay.
So yeah.
So you moved to Rome State at that point.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And what are you doing there?
So Roane State actually calls me and says, hey, we're creating a new position that will serve students with disabilities. Would you be interested in coming and help us do that? Absolutely, I will come do that. I thought that would be a great transition. And I actually, since taking that job, I've done disability work for probably 20 years, almost 20 years.
And did you move directly from there
to Tennessee Tech University? Yep.
Okay. And we reconnected at that point.
Yes.
In the disabilities community, working with students with disabilities.
Right.
In post-secondary.
Yes.
So, and I can just tell folks there's a community that's called AHEAD in each state. Tennessee AHEAD.
Right.
What does that stand
Right.
for?
It's the Association on Higher Education and Disability. So it's
right.
the national organization of people who do disability work on the college level.
Chester is huge in that community, and leads conferences, leads discussions, and is looked to by a lot of folks there, and has recently retired
Yes.
from Tech and his position there and from that community. And I read the emails, and these are some folks that are just desperately missing you, missing what you brought to that. But you have things and you're moving on. So,
Oh, yeah.
But I want to back up just a little
Okay.
bit. So college, I did the best and worst of high school. What's your best and worst college memories?
Oh my goodness, my best and worst college memory. I would say honestly my best college memory is meeting Joy at Tennessee Tech University. I would say that was probably my best memory. And a worst memory, honestly, was a year that I took to go to UT. I thought I was going to go to UT for a year, and it did not pan out well for me at the University of Tennessee, Knoxville. I'm a huge Vols fan, but I took my tail between my legs and went back to Tennessee Tech University.
It wasn't the place, right?
It was not the place for me. No.
Understood.
Yeah.
Understood. All right. So now somewhere in this time, you thought about becoming a comedian.
I did.
And you told me, I didn't know this before, it didn't quite work out at that point, but
No.
what was the genesis of that thought that I'm going to do comedy?
It was disastrous, is what it was. I thought just because, if you have a funny personality, that you can just go and you can get up in front of anybody and do anything and everybody will have fun. That is not the case. If you want to be a stand-up comedian, it's just like anything else. You got to do coaching. You've really got to study. You've got to really analyze. You've got to decide what kind of comedy you want to do. You have to figure out your audience. There's so many different things, and I did not do that early on. Made a couple of really big mistakes, and honestly just embarrassed myself. And so I again, put my tail between my legs and moved on and thought, I don't know that I'll ever do that again. But later, I did come back to that later, and I've had a good time with that.
So I think we see somebody who's not afraid to take on a challenge, who's not afraid to fail, and who's not afraid to change direction if that comes towards you. So that's Chester, and that's how he has engaged in those early years in life. And now you and Joy are together.
Yes.
And how did you find out that you were going to gain?
So Corbin, actually we had the name before we ever had Corbin. We knew that if we ever had a kid, we would name that kid Corbin. We had prayed about that. There's a specific scripture from Mark 7:11, and that says this a gift devoted to God. And so that we thought if we have children, then that is what his name will be. Corbin came along in October of 2000, and he's honestly he's an amazing kid, still is. He's just in a different place now. So
all right. So growing up, what were the things as a young man, a young toddler into elementary school? What were the things that drove Corbin?
Corbin loved anything athletic. He was very strong, and truly that is not just me as a dad saying that. He was just physically strong and loved anything that would develop that. And so I figured out very early on, as somebody who has no coordination, that I was going to need to develop that. And so we put him in any sport, and we're like, okay, you decide if you're going to like this. 4 years old, he started playing soccer. We tried t-ball. He was just like me. He got bored. He was standing out there like, I want to do something else. I want to be running. So we thought, okay, he's going to need something a little more active. And so Corbin, he loved swimming. He loved running. He loved, soccer. He loved all the things, and ultimately ended up playing several sports in school. But just from a young age, he just really loved anything kinesthetic, anything exercise. He really cared about keeping his body healthy and those kinds of things.
So, and moving into high school, he played high school football.
He
He's
did.
a big guy, number 90, if I saw right.
Correct.
So,
yes.
and you said there's a picture of him. He got to play against Oneida.
Yes.
In a scrimmage against one of his cousins.
Against one of his cousins. One of his cousins had moved to the area, lived here for a little while, and played for one season. And so, I don't know the extent of that, but it was just cool to have two cousins on the field at the same time. We got a cool picture of that, and that was really special.
So, and again, I've done some studying, so I know
Yes.
Corbin had some favorite teams.
Yeah.
And I have to ask, did you have favorite teams growing up? Was there any sport teams that you had?
I remember being a fan of like the Dallas Cowboys.
Okay.
I do remember that, but I didn't really have like a team that I followed like aggressively like my son did.
So what happened and why? You're growing up in Crossville. You're very close to Nashville. When I grew up, there was no Tennessee Titans. I latched on to a couple of teams that I have sadly passed on to both of my kids because now they have to suffer with the losses from those teams. But who did he choose?
Corbin chose the Baltimore Ravens. And I have to tell you, I really don't know exactly where that came from, but that was from a very young age. And he was also a studier. Corbin had ESPN encyclopedias that he read. He knew all the stats of all the different things, and he would tell you who would be great for this team and why and what position and all the different things. So he was a studier of sports of all kinds. And Baltimore Ravens, we began to love that team together as a family, and we have been to see the Ravens play several times in Baltimore and here in Tennessee. And you know, we were hoping one year we went up to the playoffs, and we were hoping we would get to see Baltimore beat the Tennessee Titans in the stadium, and that did not happen, and it was not a fun ride home.
Yeah.
I will say that. Yeah. So.
About 11 hours or so, right, from
Yeah,
the Inner Harbor.
It was a long drive. Yeah.
So, were there any other teams as strong as the Ravens in his?
He loved the Tennessee Vols.
Okay.
Corbin was a huge Tennessee Vols fan. In fact, he was an aggressive Tennessee Vols fan too. I remember watching. We were watching a game one night, and Corbin would, of course, eat snacks, wings, pizza, whatever, while he's watching the game. And I remember he had a piece of pizza in his hand. And I remember something happened that he was not happy with, and he slung that pizza, and it went over and stuck to the wall and slid down. And I was like, oh, he's going to be in so much trouble with his mom, But yeah, it was that kind of aggressive. He loved sports and was super aggressive about it. But he also loves soccer. He was a big Manchester United fan, as far as soccer goes. And so yeah, he had some favorite teams for sure.
And also, there's a picture on the website that I've seen. At a young age, he's dressed up like a police officer. But,
Yes.
But Corbin, straight out of high school, where did he go?
Okay, so Corbin graduated high school in 2019. He goes to Tennessee Tech.
Pandemic.
Pandemic. Pandemic. It just was not a good experience for any of those kids at that time.
Right.
And even working at the university, I knew they weren't getting the same experience.
Right.
You go, you're expecting a college experience, and it was really just a terrible time. It was like we were all living a bad dream,
Yeah.
And so, so he was there. He was there 3 semesters, almost 3 semesters. He left in the middle of his sophomore year. He had initially signed up, registered as an exercise science major, and he came to me. He's like, I don't want to do that. He's like, I love exercise science. I don't want that to be my job, which I completely get that. And so he changed to criminal justice, and he was like, I would like to go into law enforcement. He had talked about that through the years, loved anything law enforcement or first responder. He loved any emergency related thing he always had. And then pandemic, and he says, Dad, I can go and work for our local sheriff's department or someplace like that, and I don't necessarily have to have a degree for this. And I said, absolutely, there's no sense in being miserable, just come home.
So he had gone. He was staying at Tech. So you had a little kind of taste of the empty nest.
He did,
But you're working there.
Yes.
So I mean, you're right there if he needs you or whatever. If you need him, but then now he decides that he comes back home and he's back home.
Yes.
And I want to kind of just pause here and draw back and talk about faith.
Yes.
Because you talked about meeting joy at the Baptist Student Union. Faith has been a big part of your lives in growing up in Corbin's life. A big part, you had him in church. Talk to us about faith during those times.
Okay, yeah. Corbin was involved in church his entire life. And I mean, he from the time he was a baby on, he was in church. Never missed a vacation Bible school, none of those kinds of things. Corbin was accepted Christ when he was 7 years old. In his bedroom, his mother led him to Christ, and he was baptized at our church, but the caveat was he wanted to wear his goggles. And so he wore his goggles when he was baptized, and there's a picture of the pastor holding him up with the big goggles on. It's just this kind of cool moment. Yeah, faith is a huge part of our life, and we've been heavily involved in church. I've been on worship teams for years. No longer on a worship team, but I did that for many years, probably, 15, 17 years. Corbin was heavily involved in youth group, those kinds of things. So we taught Sunday school, all of that, so yeah.
And I'll just reference in the blog that we're going to talk about, you have a blog on a website called corbinsdad.com.
Yes.
There is a post where you talk about, he asked you about death and the afterlife there, and that was brought on. Was that at the passing of your mother?
Oh yeah, yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, when I laugh about that because it's a very interesting memory.
Yeah.
But yeah, Corbin, we had conversations about about death, and in particular, that was spurred upon the death of his great grandmother, and and so we remember having a conversation saying, she's in heaven now. So we walk into the funeral home, and he's like, "Is this heaven?"
Right.
Because in a kid's mind, you're like, "What is this?" With the pink lamps and
Sure.
all this stuff, and it's like, "I don't know, I'm not feeling this," So, but later that evening, we were talking. It may not have been that evening, but later we were talking, and I had decided, I had lost my dad, I lost my mom, he lost a great grandmother. I had said, we're going to have conversations and we're going to be very real about them.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember laying him down one night, and he was like, "Dad, I remember telling him how much I loved him and all these different things, how proud I am of him." And he's like, "Are you going to die or something?" Because we were having that
Why are you
conversation.
feeling all
Why are we
this,
talking
right?
about
Yeah.
this? And I remember saying, no, but I am going to die one of these days. Absolutely, we are all going to die one of these days. And he said, "Am I going to die?" I said, "Yes." Every intention in my mind, every expectation would be that it would be myself. I would be the one who would pass away first. But that's not always how it works out.
All right. So, and you said it was age 7?
Yes.
That Corbin accepted Christ
Yes.
and was baptized?
Yes.
All right. We're going to take a break and come back, and we're going to shift the focus forward in time. Chester Goad is our guest here on the IHSN Spotlight Conversation today, and we'll take a break and we'll be back in just a moment. Welcome back to the IHSN Spotlight Conversation. I'm Tim Smith. I'm your host. Chester Goad is here with us tonight. Chester represents servstrong.us, and we're going to get to that as we talk about servstrong.us in our last segment. But before we do that, we've talked a little bit about biography for you, Chester.
Yes.
Not original, and you grew up here. You have been in the Tennessee area. Your wife, Joy, you met in college, and then you had a son named Corbin.
Yes.
And so the reason we're here tonight is to discuss Corbin, because it's been less than a couple of years, and there was a night that happened, and you described it in your blog as being forced into an empty nest. That struck me. And so tell us about that night.
Sure. I'm going to back up and tell you the night before.
Okay. Yes.
So the day before, Corbin and his girlfriend were going to go skating. Corbin was working for the sheriff's department. He was new at the sheriff's department. He was working in the jail. He was in the corrections division at the sheriff's department, and and kind of in an entry-level position. So he was trying to be very careful. He wanted to make a good impression. So his girlfriend says, "We're going to go skating." Corbin he'd done a lot of things. He had never really gone roller skating. That was just not a thing. That was kind of a thing when we were growing up. It was not a thing for him. And he's like, "She's going to get me over there. I'm going to break my leg or something." I'm like, "I don't know about that. We'll see how this goes." So he comes in that night, and he's all smiley and stuff. And I said, "Well, how'd it go?" And he said, "It went great." I said, "Well, no injuries, no anything?" And he's like, "No." "And you want to know why?" I said, "Why?" He said, "Because I bought myself one of those little, the little things that you hold on to. They look kind of like a walker, but they roll."
Oh, I wish I had known, because I was a mess on skates.
He did. He said there was no way I was going to kill myself over there, So he said I went around a few times with her and did that, and I just laughed. I thought that was very funny, to see this big, strong guy going around there, being very careful. But then afterward, he was playing some kind of games. They have games there, where you can win prizes, and he won these giant Smartie candies, which Smarties were like his favorite candy growing up. I remember when he was little in his car seat in the car, and he was eating Smarties. So, but he won those, and he goes, "Oh, wait a second!" Runs out to his car. He's like, "Dad, I won these." And he had a small one, and he had a large one, and he said, "Do you want one of these?" And I said, "Sure." And so he gave me some, and he goes, only share these with people who love me." And I was like, "Oh, I'm honored, thank you," And we just kind of laughed it off, said, "I love you," and good night. So the next day, Joy and I go to Pigeon Forge. Corbin and his girlfriend go to some races. We're out of touch, mostly because they didn't have signal, we didn't have signal, so it was very spotty. Had a few comments back and forth, but other than that, it was a beautiful day. to this day, it was one of the best days that we have ever had, as far as just like wandering around. The sun was shining. We were enjoying each other's company. Everything was working out in Pigeon Forge. There was not a lot of traffic. It was just a good day. Mm-hmm. And came home from that. I was on the couch. I was actually making TikToks. I was, making TikToks of my day in Pigeon Forge, and get a frantic phone call from his girlfriend. And I really couldn't understand her at first. There was a lot of screaming. I told her she needed to calm down, tell me what's going on. I would come. And she said, it's bad, it's really bad. And so I remember posting on Facebook, please pray for my family. And we didn't know what to do, because the accident happened in Jamestown. We live in Crossville, so it's like 40-minute drive. And so we'd gone and gotten gas, and we were waiting in our driveway because we'd been told he was going to be life flighted somewhere. So we didn't want to drive to Jamestown if he was going to be in Knoxville, Chattanooga, Nashville, whatever. So we were just kind of waiting. In the process, my college roommate, who works for the sheriff's department, also pulls into our driveway. And he's like, "What y'all doing out here?" And so we explained, and he obviously already knew. And so he said, "Well, I'll just wait here with you then." And I remember my wife got a text message that said they've decided not to life flight him. And in my mind, I'm like, "Oh, this is good." I'm an optimist. And I was like, this is good. It means maybe he's going to be at the local hospital. And my wife said immediately she knew, and she sat down in the car seat, and I was standing outside. My friend, who works for the sheriff's department, goes over, checks his radio, comes back, and he said, Chester Corbin didn't make it. And I just remember screaming in our front yard, I don't even know what I was saying. I just remember I was talking to God. I just remember it was this uttering to God, and so then finally he says, would you like me to take you to him? He said, I can call in advance and tell him that we're coming. So we hop in his truck. I don't even remember the drive. We get there, and they were very respectful. Everybody was so awesome. All the people on the scene, law enforcement, as you might imagine, they had shut the highway down because there were so many emergency vehicles there. And Corbin's car had left the road. He was in some trees. They had to cut him out. They had him cleaned up and in the ambulance when we got there. And the ME says, there are some first responders who would like to talk with you. Would you be okay with that? And I said, sure. They came in and they said, we had a conversation with Corbin. So we had, they told us about that conversation. They said most of it was very typical. It was, how old are you? Where do you work? Where do you live? Just trying to have some conversation. And I remember them saying that Corbin had said, guys, I'm paralyzed. And they said, we understand. We're trying to get you out of here. And then a few minutes passed by, and Corbin says something, to the effect of, guys, I'm going to leave now. I'm going to leave. And they were like, whoa, wait a second, trying to work on him. And he just leaves us. And they really want to share that conversation with us. It's not every time you get to have a conversation with somebody. I don't know the statistics on that. But we were so grateful for that, and grateful for the way they framed it with us, because all of Corbin's life, he would reference, I'm going to leave, or I'm going to do this or that. I'd be like, where are you going? He's like, Dad, you don't have to know everything. And I'm like, well, if you're going to leave, you're going somewhere. Where are you going? So that's the crux of the conversation. So if anything, it was a comfort for us, the way they framed that conversation for us. I'm not sure exactly how the conversation went. We will never know. But the idea that Corbin left us is exactly what we believe, because to leave means you're going somewhere. And we know where Corbin is. And so Corbin is in heaven, and that is something we have come to hopeful terms with. So,
you talked about in the blog the comfort of knowing that someone was there to have a conversation with
absolutely.
him. That
yes.
That he had someone there with him.
Yes. Yes. I still deal with a lot of thoughts. I can be driving down the road, just thinking about him, and my mind will sometimes go to that place, to where those moments, to where there wasn't anybody with him. I don't know how long that was. 3, 4, 5 minutes, who knows? And it hurts my heart to think that he's by himself, and I have to remind myself he was not alone.
Right.
You know, even in our worst, when we think we are completely alone, we are not alone. So that's at least where my hope comes from.
And so those words you got from the first responders.
Yes.
I'm going to leave.
Yes.
From Corbin, his final words.
Yes.
You took those and you crafted. Was it a poem at first?
It was. It was really just thoughts. I was at lunch at Tennessee Tech. I had a notepad with me, and I just kind of started writing down some thoughts just about Corbin and about that conversation and what that could mean and what that does mean for us, you know. And so wrote that down. It became a song. I worked with a guy named David Delgado out of Oklahoma. He's a good friend of mine, and he also produced the video for that. He has a video company, and then worked with Sam Hart, who's a music producer out of Nashville, and he does a lot of music production, especially in faith-based circles. And so we released that on Father's Day 1.
So we're going to take a look at that video now. The song again, the artist.
Yes.
Tell the name again.
Okay, so I knew I didn't want to release the song as Chester Goad. I wanted to release it as Corbin's dad, and that is important because, you know, something that I've been reminded is that I'm still Corbin's dad. It just looks different now. It feels different, and I can still honor him in different ways. I can still be dad to him. It's just he's not here with me, you know. And so I did that honestly to honor other people because I feel like people need to know it's okay to still be whoever's dad, whoever's mom, and so that's why I released the song as Corbin's dad.
First day of preschool, balled up fists and curly hair. Wide-eyed, you saw a band of buddies there. Relaxed your fist and grinned, and turned to your new friends. Bye, Daddy, I think I'm gonna leave. And off you went. A few ball games later, suddenly you turned 16. Snapping awkward pics at the DMV. Raced your truck to Sonic for chili tots with extra cheese. Thanks, Mama, I think I'm gonna leave. If you say you're gonna leave, you're going somewhere. But the place we wanna be is where you are. Though now is not the time, you're forever on our minds. We hope you always know we're not too far. If you say you're gonna leave, you're going somewhere. Left for college, learned some life, but just not happy. A morning text said, this is not my thing. Well, son, you're not alone. It's okay when you know. Pack up and come on home. It's time to leave. If you say you're gonna leave, you're going somewhere. What matters most is knowing who you are. Though now is not the time, it's okay to change your mind. By now you ought to know we're not too far. If you say you're gonna leave, you're going somewhere. Got your dream job, met a girl and fell in love. We knew soon you'd move to your own place. We ate, we laughed, we hugged, but it would never be enough. It was the last time here on earth we'd see your face. got a late night call that broke our hearts and bowed our knees. We believe that there must be a plan that we can't see. When the first responders told us your last words that brought us peace, I'm gonna leave, I'm gonna leave. We know somewhere is eternal, somewhere's full of love and full of joy, somewhere's a shining city, clear pure water, golden streets, and somewhere is where God is, and also where you are, and then someday, somewhere is where we'll also be. If you say you're gonna leave, you're going somewhere, and we believe we know just where you are. Oh, and though it was your time, you're forever on our mind. 'Cause we got hope, and somewhere's not too far. If you say you're gonna leave, you're going somewhere. Oh, and someday down the road, we'll see you somewhere.
There you have the song, I'm Gonna Leave, and Chester Goad is with me. He is Corbin's dad, who is the artist listing on that song. And so Chester, this was a poem you shared just right before this that you had worked on and you wrote. And I shared with you just a few moments ago when we were in a break that there may be someone else that is out there and honest and just stream of consciousness, sharing thoughts. I haven't met them or seen them or anything like that, but certainly the things you have done, in my opinion, have been powerful. And there is a website called corbinsdad.com where you have a blog. And I want to talk just a little bit about the blog on that. And one of the first entries you had was talking about, I believe you were traveling, maybe out west, and you say, and I was seeing him here, and I was seeing him there. You saw him on the plane in his Ravens hat.
Yep.
Tell us what that. I mean, is it? Are you physically seeing him, or in your mind you're seeing him? What did that feel like?
You know, that's interesting. I mean, I know where Corbin is, but when we traveled, we were together. You know, he would take trips with his mom, we would take family trips, and he would take trips with me. So we always tried to make sure we had some individual time as a family with each other. And so I see him in all those natural places, you know, and I see him with things that he would enjoy, just like I talked about in that blog. He is, you know, your kid, even when they're not with you, they're with you. You know,
Right.
I mean, you think about them and you see them in the things that are around you, and you're reminded of them by pictures and photos and, you know, the things that they loved, you know. And so, yeah, I think I was out in Portland when I wrote that. And yeah, I still see him. You know, so I can be driving in the car listening to music or listening to a game, because it brings great comfort to have a game going. So sometimes in the car or at home, especially when I'm traveling in a hotel, I usually will have ESPN or something on. And it's just very comforting to me. But I can look over in the car and I feel like he's like right there with me, you know. So
You also talk about visiting the memorial. His memorial is there, just very near to your home.
Oh, yes.
You visit often, and
Yep.
you even talk about there's people you don't know, but you do know, because the lady in the gray van. and
yes,
these
and there's
people,
Blue Car Man. He's
there's
still
blue-
there. Still
right.
there. Yeah.
There's the people you encounter
Yeah.
that are doing the same thing that you are.
Yeah.
Talk about those times. Is there something that? How do you decide? I'm going to go right now. I'm going to go out there right now.
It's kind of funny. Like, honestly, I started going, of course, because you want to be close, because even though your son's spirit isn't there, his body is still there, you know, and so it just kind of brings a little bit of comfort, I think. But I also am in a battle with the birds in the cemetery because the birds poop on the headstone. I go over and clean it off, and so I'm kind of in a battle with the birds. And so that it's kind of humorous. I tell Joy, you know, sometimes I wanted his stone to reflect who he is. It is, you know, this black granite it came from India, you know, and it's just large. It's over by the road. It's 2 blocks from our house. And like I said, I just wanted it to represent who Corbin is to me. But at the same time, you know, I know he's not there. And but I do get tickled sometimes because we want to be a representation of him. Like we have like these flames, you know, torch flames that are up by the granite and things like that. And I told Joy, you know, I just want his to be the best. It's like keeping up with the Joneses. Perhaps the people over here are the Joneses. You know what I'm saying? So we just kind of, I'm a comedian, so I'll just make silly jokes and stuff like that. And you know, it does bring comfort to come to the cemetery, but it's not for the reasons that people think. I know he's not there, but it's nice having it close.
And you talk about, I feel like a kinship when I read things like, someone might describe you as an overthinker, or you're a planner. I get accused of this sometimes, but I mean, you were thinking about the anniversary. What am I going to do? You talked about in the blog a trip to Mississippi, a trip to Asheville around those times.
Yes.
You don't, you know, you were new at this. You don't know what to do.
You don't know what to do, and I know what I didn't want to do is I did not want to be at home. And I knew my wife did not want to be at home. And so we also did not want to go to places where we would go with Corbin. We had a disastrous trip to the beach because Corbin loved the ocean and we loved the beach, and we would go to the beach as a family. It was disastrous. And so we knew from that point on we were not going to do that. I don't know when we'll ever get back to the beach. Same thing with our family cabin, you know. But yeah, we went to Laurel, Mississippi last year. I don't know where we'll go this year for a year or two. I don't know what we'll do. But there's something about, for us, this is how we're grieving, this is how we're processing together. It wasn't a good idea. So,
you also had a letter, which I thought was a really good, you know, a lot of times I'll write a letter to someone and then never send it, and it's a good decision to not send it. You know, that's my way of working through some things sometimes. Yes. You wrote a letter to Corbin. That was this past New Year, I believe.
Yep.
Talk a little bit about that.
Just, well, the idea was, you know, he's not here. What are the things that have transpired in a year? Because as someone who's dealing with grief, time gets away from you and you get a little anxious about that because the last thing you want is for anybody to forget the person that you love, right? And so I wanted to just kind of have that conversation with him, even though he's not here, and, you know, just talk about life and what's transpired. And you know, someday I'll get to have these conversations face to face, but right now this is the best I can do. So,
you also talk about, and I'm an animal lover as well. Some people would be like, "What is that about?" But you talk about pets.
Yes.
And I understand this. We have a couple of dogs, and I understand this concept of a pet walking to a door. Yep. You talk about in the blog, one of the pets walks to his door and looks in.
Yep.
And and you feel like it's not rocket science to say they're feeling these feelings of missing him as well.
Sure. Yeah. No, I think so. Especially early on, but even still, I think you know, Julie, especially, I think is the dog that I was talking about. She will stop at the door and look in. One of his rescues was a cat named Lucy. She sleeps on his bed. That is where she goes at night. You know, she spends the day outside. She comes in. She lays on his bed. You know, all the animals that we have are a result of Corbin. And I think that we sometimes forget that animals grieve as well, you know. And so, I just kind of wanted to express that. And I love those animals, and they do bring a good deal of joy to me because Corbin brought them to the house, you know. So.
One of the things that's received a lot of attention, rightfully so, happened this past Father's Day.
Yes.
I think I talked to you right before that, and then I saw, oh, he's going to be hitting the big stations now. You were on K-Love, you were
Yeah.
on the local TV stations,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
there was a connection. I'm not even going to try to start this story. I'm going to let you tell the entire story of
Yes.
what has brought this attention back a month ago.
Yeah, so when Corbin was in the 3rd grade, he won a contest to talk to astronauts at the International Space Station. So he talked to the crew. That was back in 2009. He was 9 years old in the 3rd grade. That crew actually included Barry Butch Wilmore, and who is an astronaut who has ties to Tennessee, some ties to this area as well. And he, and so fast forward, Barry Butch Wilmore is back in space, and he did us the honor this year of remembering Corbin in space. And we have a friend, his sister-in-law is a good friend of mine, and Lori Bradshaw, and she works in the country music industry and the entertainment industry, and we're just good buddies, have been for a long time. And she had worked that out for him. You know, she's like, hey, what do you think about this? And he had, I know he's familiar with the song and those kinds of things, and just wanted to do something special for us. And it just so happened that I received it on Father's Day. It wasn't supposed to happen, but you know, Boeing, there's been a little troubles of late,
yeah.
and so the Boeing, the rocket that they were going up into had a little bit of trouble, so it was delayed 2 or 3 times, and he's actually still up there right now. But he sent us this photo, and it's just amazing. It says in memory of Corbin Goad, #Servr Strong, and you see it there, and you can see the Earth behind it. So from space, and something I tell people now is, like, you know, if you ever had any wonder how detailed and very specific that God loves us, that He would do something so very detailed. Because I believe that something like that could only be orchestrated by God. I really do believe that, you know, with the help of an astronaut and with the help of a good friend, you know. But I remember waking up, and I saw that and was just really blessed by it. And I remember turning to Joy and saying, whose kid's name is in space right now? You know, our kid's name is in space right now. And only that, to me, that only could happen because of God.
One detail you left out of that I've read a couple of times.
Yes.
You know, we all have those Sunday mornings when we wake up. Yours was for a very different reason in this case. Whereas I don't know if I'm going to go.
Oh
today.
yeah. The holidays, especially Mother's Day and Father's Day, those are days that people have different philosophies. I just know emotionally for us, that is not something we can do right now. And I don't know when we'll be able to do that again, to be at church on Mother's Day and Father's Day. God bless all the moms and dads. It's absolutely nothing about that. It's just it's a difficult day.
Why do you think, and well, I haven't formed this question very well, but do you feel like you're doing yourself as much good to have these conversations as you are people who are hearing them? Because I feel like I said earlier, I don't think there are people out there that are bold enough or maybe confident, I don't know what the word would be, but to approach these conversations about mortality and tragedy and the experience you've had, and are willing to put themselves out there so openly. I think it's incredibly needed.
It is. Yeah, I was desperate for answers and connection and understanding, and I wasn't finding a lot out there, especially for dads, from a dad's perspective. And so I thought, well, I can share. You know, we came home the night that Corbin left us, and I told Joy, you know, she was exhausted. She wanted to go to bed. It was probably 3 or 4 in the morning at that point. And I said, you know, people are going to be watching how we react to this. And as people of faith, we have to show our faith. And we can't crumble when the worst happens to us. And I remember asking Joy, I was like, why did this happen to us? And she said, why not? We are not special. This happens to people all the time. It just happens to happen to us. And I remember, you know, that was a difficult reality but it happens a lot. And if there's anything that I can do to help somebody kind of talk through that or walk through that, I'm definitely going to do it, because I know what a struggle it has been for me. And it is not easy. It is not an easy road, but the more that we can do to kind of normalize it, because people don't like talking about grief. It's something that's very uncomfortable. Our own mortality is something we don't want to talk about, but I think it's important that we do. I will say another reason that I think that we've been able to deal with it this way is early on, a good friend said, don't forget, there's a scripture in Isaiah that says, in a spirit of heaviness, put on a garment of praise. And what other spirit of heaviness can there be besides grief, And I just remember thinking, okay, I'm going to worship through this. That doesn't make sense to me. But I started doing that, and that doesn't necessarily mean listening to music, but a lot of it is for me, because it's kind of like a medicine. It may not be what I want to do at the time, but it is necessary for healing to take place. So,
something that and I don't know that I'm going to be able to enunciate this properly, or my thought on this, but a thought I've always had is, many times people are so confident about how they would handle something, and in a situation like this, I think you've heard before, before this happened to you, and it could be any type of situation that is a tragedy, and I've heard people, I won't even say casting judgment, but like saying, I don't think I would have handled this that way. That's one of the things about the things you put out there, is I don't think anybody that maybe doesn't handle it exactly like you do feels like you're pronouncing judgment on them. No. Here's how to do it. Step one, step two. No. That's not your intention. But your intention is to be honest about how it's affected you. Yeah. And I truly believe no one knows until it happens to you.
Absolutely.
What you're going to do and how it's going to be. And I mean, you probably don't even know what September is going to look like right now.
I do not. There is no formula for dealing with grief. There's no recipe or answers, nothing that I can tell anybody. All I know is what I have walked, and what I would encourage people. I guess the formula is to just be real, because people need to see that. And sometimes it's not pretty. One of the worst things that ever happened to me, I remember standing out in the city cemetery not long after Corbin had passed. Didn't even have a stone on his grave, and it had poured the rain like it is outside right now, pouring. And I got there to the gravesite, and everything had sunken down. That's not something I expected. I did not know that this is what happens in those first big rains after someone is buried. But it was just a big pool mess. There were any decorations were all floating around the cemetery. There, everything was so muddy and messed up, and it was an ugly moment. And I remember jumping out of my car, and I was so mad. I was so angry, and I was standing there. I had water up to my ankles. And I was just like, I don't even know. I was like ranting, and I was trying to gather up, and it just looked like, looking from the outside, I know somebody had to think, okay, this guy is crazy. What is he doing? But it was the reality, because you cannot prepare yourself for this to happen to you. But there are lots of things that happen afterward that you're not prepared for either. And I remember people driving by, and I remember somebody saying they had seen me out there, and they were just devastated by seeing somebody in that situation. It was hard.
Some questions that came to me late that I just want to kind of give to you. Are there phrases or books or shows or movies or songs that you used to like that now I can't do that? Maybe not even because of an emotional thing, but because of the message in it. I didn't really hear the message of it before. I don't know. Just it was a thought I had.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of time heals all things. When it comes to grief, it does not. It really doesn't. You learn to live differently. You learn to live new. I don't like, this is going to sound weird, but for some reason, I really don't like scary movies anymore. Corbin always he would love like the ghost adventure shows and things like that. And when we went to like cities, old historic cities, we would do the ghost tours and things like that. He enjoyed those kinds of things. I don't really like that, because I know where Corbin is. And so those are just a few things that I don't like. But you kind of have to get used to. I think one of the hardest things is a lot of the hymns we sing in church. Pay attention next time. Just think about, okay, how would a person who is dealing with grief feel? It doesn't mean there's anything wrong with the hymn. That's not what I'm saying. Sure. It just hits different. The term hits different. It definitely hits different, and it can be pretty uncomfortable. I mentioned I used to be on the worship team. I don't do that anymore because I don't think I'm emotionally ready to do that, and I'm not sure that I ever will be again. But I certainly still go to church.
So you mentioned the time heals all things. Are there other things that people would say? It seemed like, it was like, oh, somebody said that to me again.
Yeah,
just as a way of hey, maybe we'll avoid doing this to someone.
People will say, how are you? How are you, especially early on? How are you? Well, that's a crazy, insane question. You know what I'm saying? You're not doing well. I tell people, one of the things that you can say is just a suggestion is, how'd you make it today? How are you making it today? Because that sort of turns it around a little bit different, just I think also normalizing the conversation, and it's okay it's for me, and I think many others, I think it's okay to talk about your kid, and I think people should feel comfortable asking, about them and things like that. One of the first things we did, last year we went to a retreat called While We're Waiting. And While We're Waiting is a faith-based group, a retreat. It's free to anybody who's grieving, but it's designed for people who have lost a child. And so it was interesting going to that and being with other people who were processing the same thing. And some of them, we were pretty fresh. They told us when we got there, you guys are fresh. We're fresh. We're surprised you're here. Mm-hmm. But I was seeking answers. I'm like, I need to know how to deal with this, problem solver. And but there were others who were, 3, 5, 13, 20 years out, who were at that retreat. And it was just, it's not going to fix all your problems to be at that retreat, but it's nice to process with people who have dealt with the same thing.
So if you were giving advice to someone who has a friend when this occurs, what would you say? Here's some things. Here's your best course of action. I think you've been around it tonight, but just if you could summarize it to here, why don't you just handle it this way?
Yeah, I don't think there's anything that I could prescribe to anybody, but I will say what has helped me.
I'm talking about to the people, the friends of you.
The friends of me.
Yeah, or the friends who have.
Yeah. Okay, that's great. Yeah. I like that. Because I don't think I could prescribe an answer to anybody. But as far as for friends, sit with discomfort. Be willing to just go sit and listen. You don't have to say anything. You don't have to try and solve anything. There's not a way you can solve a thing in the world, but just stay active, make phone calls, check in, definitely drop by if you can. I think early on, it's really nice when people drop by and drop food off and things like that, but that is awful easy. I think it'd be better if you could just say, hey, do you need somebody to sit with you for a few minutes? And we've done that before. I will tell you, one of the best things that's happened to me is Corbin's friends. They've been great. They've stayed in contact. I remember early on, I was at a coffee shop that I frequent on Saturday mornings, and one of Corbin's best friends just comes in and grabs coffee and sits down with me. And we just sit for a while, and I see him regularly, and they check in. They've been very good. Isn't it interesting that young people are sometimes better about those kinds of things than people who have a lot of life experiences who we overthink it, right, as you mentioned earlier. Yeah.
Well, and as a Christian, from the book of Job, his friends were doing okay for a while because they kept their mouths closed.
Right, exactly.
So just go with that. Just put an arm around.
That's a good point.
Just go with that, right?
Yes.
It was when they started to open their mouth that it was.
Yeah. Got a little dicey.
Yeah, exactly. All right. So Chester, you mentioned. I want to just talk a little bit about this. You said you felt pressure as a Christian. You felt like people were watching how you were gonna react to this.
Yes.
I can imagine so.
Yeah.
And I mean, so with everything else going on, and you used the word pressure.
Yeah, it is pressure.
Isn't it a shame that that maybe you feel like people are going to make a judgment on you
one way or the other?
Yeah.
I've done this, some of the comedy stuff, and I have stepped back from it quite a bit, but you even feel internal pressure about having fun, about being silly, about, you know, any of those kinds of things. You feel it, and probably no one in the world is thinking that. I mean, there may be, but for the most part, I think we put a lot of internal pressure on ourselves.
Yeah. So do you feel like you're getting better at not doing that to yourself?
I think about it less. I think I'm more comfortable just being me and doing whatever I need to do. And you know, so I tell people, you know, you just be yourself. You know, people need to see the highs and lows. That's where we put ourselves in trouble, especially from a faith-based perspective. I think people need to see when we're doing well, and people need to see us be honest when we're not doing so well.
And we talked about faith after that first segment. I mean, if you could say, here's what's different about faith now.
Mm-hmm.
Here's how my faith looks different. How does it look different?
It's a lot more personal, I think. I think I have a lot more moments. I'll tell you, Joy and I were teaching about heaven a year prior to Corbin leaving us at our church. We were teaching a class on heaven. And I feel like that is God's very specific way of preparing us for this. And we eat up anything about heaven. We are studiers. My wife is like a theologian, you know. But if you think about something like that, you know, if your kid's going on, let's say they're going to go away for a year and study abroad, you're going to learn as much as you can about that place. Where's my kid going? What are they going to be doing? How are they going to stay busy? How are they going to live? How are they going to eat? You know, those kinds of things. And then if we're going to go visit, we want to do the same thing, right? We want to learn before we get there. Okay, what's appropriate, you know, and what's this look like? What about this amazing place that we're going? You know, why do we spend so little time thinking about this amazing place that we're going? You know, where Corbin is right now, you know.
I talked with a gentleman who had lost his father recently. I lost my father a couple of years ago. Mm-hmm. And in that loss, one of the things I shared with him, and I'd just be interested to hear, you may have already had this thought, but when tears begin, it's tears of sorrow for the separation, for the loss, but it's a good outlet because generally a good cry, by the end of that, you're finishing with tears of praise and thankfulness for having had and for having the hope that you have.
Yeah, having a future. No, I think that's exactly right. And Jesus modeled that for us. You know, Jesus wept. You know, and I think that's important for us to remember. But I think to backtrack, you asked me about faith and how things have changed, and I feel like I've gotten closer to God. You know, and it makes me sad that people who, you know, something really terrible happens in their life and they become so angry and bitter that they don't really take God up on His love for them and give Him an opportunity to love on them and comfort them.
Welcome back to the IHSN Spotlight Conversation. I'm Tim Smith. This is Chester Goad. And Chester has been very open and shared with us a lot of things tonight. And of course, this revolves around the passing of his son, Corbin. And again, all the information we've talked about before, if you go to corbinsdad.com, I have just barely touched on the things that you can find out about Corbin and about Chester and about dealing with grief. I can't recommend strongly enough that you go take in corbinsdad.com and you're adding stuff there all the time. It's great. But you made a decision. You're leaving Tennessee Tech in a high-profile position, disabilities coordinator. I mean, nobody's trying to push you out the door on that. You could have just wrote it out and finished there. You're making the move. You're changing, and it's all about Servr Strong. You've got on the shirt. We've got the slide. Servstrong.us. Filling in gaps for the heroes. What's this mean?
Okay, so I told you this. I told you what happened. Corbin's final conversation with first responders. A lot of people think that Servr Strong, that we created Servr Strong, because Corbin was a part of the sheriff's department and things like that. That may be like a really small piece, but primarily we created Servr Strong because one of the best things that happened to us, or one of the most impactful things, I would say, not the best, but the most impactful thing, was the conversation we had with first responders. And it touched us in such a way that we realized that they are first responders, but not every response is a rescue. And so first responders deal with a lot of trauma. They are dealing with difficult situations, difficult problems to solve regularly. And I'll be very honest, I love all first responders, you know, firefighters, police, all. But I feel like sometimes kind of maybe less recognized are those EMS folks who are first responders on scenes, who are paramedics and things like that on an accident, and they are heroes too. And they walk around just as much with trauma as any other first responder. And so it really touched us that in the midst of what had to be a very difficult night, a lot of hard work, probably exhausted, these folks came to us and had a conversation about our son, and they showed so much compassion. And we thought, you know, if we're going to do something to honor Corbin, this is the way to do it. Let's support people who are doing this kind of work. And so we created Servr Strong. Filling in the gaps is basically just that. We know that there are certain, counties receive a certain amount of money, like EMS. Any first responder station is likely to receive a certain amount of state fund, federal fund, county funds, those kinds of things. But all of those funds are typically, or most, tied to strings. They have limits on them on what they can do and what they can't do. And in the meantime, a lot of the stations that we've been visiting, people we've been talking to, the research that we've been doing, we're finding, especially local here in the Cumberland area, Upper Cumberland, the counties around us. A lot of these stations, some of them are in bad shape. When I say that, it may not be like the physical structure, but what is it you want from a first responder? We want our first responders. This is what we believe, and this is what they've told us. We want first responders to be fit and strong. We want them to be well rested. We want them to have the tools and things that they need, and the mental health and emotional health to be able to do their job and save lives. And so what we're finding is that some of these stations, the various stations, or whether it's like EMS stations, fire stations, whatever, volunteer stations even, I would include in there, rescue squad, whatever, people who are responding to difficult situations and trauma, a lot of times, you know, they don't have appropriate beds, mattresses, you know, a place to sleep, like it's not appropriate. It may be that they don't have exercise equipment. It could be that they need some mental health and emotional health and well-being services, those kinds of things. So we have an ongoing survey. We will never stop gathering information, where we're asking first responders, we want from them, what do you need? And they're telling us exactly what we've just said. The top, you know, there's like a top 10 of things that they've listed. They're not asking for new ambulances. They're not even asking for new buildings. They're asking for a good, solid place to sleep. They spend as much time in these stations as they spend at home. You know, I mean, it's home away from home. And sometimes they're there 24 hours. Some of these places, it depends on how they do their shifts. Some of them are there for a week at a time. I mean, and so you need these men and women to be comfortable, and you need them also to have the ability to work out, and you know, do anything that any of us would like to do at home, but to stay healthy and those kinds of things. And the number one answer that we get when we ask what they need, and this is an anonymous survey, we also ask them personally as well, but we try to keep their, you know, identities anonymous as well, because there's a lot of political things, you know, about sharing from the job. But the number one answer that we get is that they are concerned with their mental and emotional health, which completely makes sense. And why aren't we putting more emphasis on that?
So you have on servrstrong.us, if you're a first responder that's watching this,
Yes.
you can go take this survey. You don't have to be from Cumberland County or
No.
Crossville or what. This, and you're looking to, you want this to grow.
That we have a dream. We have initially focused on 3 counties, just because we're brand new and funds are limited. But as we grow, we definitely want to do the entire Cumberland like plateau area, and that does include our area, Scott County area. It includes Cumberland and Fentress, and I think there's like 16 areas we would ultimately like to grow to, but we started out with 3, and we chose those 3 because Putnam County is where Corbin was born. Cumberland County was where Corbin grew up and played sports. Fentress County was where Corbin left us and entered heaven. And so those are the 3 that was like, okay, if we're going to start anywhere. But anyone who lives in this area could have a need from a first responder at any time. Like if you're traveling through,
That's right.
we want all of our first responders to be fit and healthy. We also have another mission, though.
Well, I was going to ask you about
Okay,
that.
well, ask me then.
The extension that really, I mean, I think this would have been a great thing to do, but what really fits, with me and with what we see, you have sideline support.
Yes.
Talk about that.
It's very important to us. One reason for that is because we definitely wanted an athletic tie-in to Corbin's kind of his heritage, his history, and because he loves sports, of course. But also, just like there's first responders that are out on the roads and things, if you've noticed at the games, who do we have at our games, or who should we have? We're typically going to have some EMS or first responder folks, paramedics on the side. We're also going to have our athletic trainers and people who are serving students over on the bench. Those kinds of things, our student athletes. And, my greatest fear is not being prepared on the sidelines when something happens. And we have seen, even in the news, these stories of, collapses on the field and things like that. And I'm not saying that that is like extraordinarily common, but it does happen and we need to be prepared for that. And when I've been talking with athletic trainers and others, I say, what is your need? Just like I asked the first responders, and we have a survey on our website for them as well. Anybody who serves on sidelines in sports, it can be actual first responders, it can be athletic trainers, or anyone, doctors, physicians, whoever, what is needed on the sideline? The most common answer that I've gotten so far has been AED support, those kinds of things. And the reason for that, they said it's not so much even during a game, but it's practices and camps that they're doing and where they're concerned. And one of them explained to me, I did not know this. I do know that AEDs do cost a fair amount of money. They're pretty pricey. But they said most schools have like 1, maybe 2 AED per school. Think about how many sports you have in a school, right? Multiple sports, and after school, what's going on? You have practices all over in different places. And the way it was explained to me is you have 2 to 3 minutes max to really save a life. And if you don't know where that AED is, do you really want to run to the baseball field if you're on the football field? Right. Every sport ideally should have an AED. I mean, that's just like a basic, I think. And so, it's those moments when maybe there aren't first responders, EMS at your building. It's those moments when you're practicing and there's perhaps heat exhaustion and those kinds of things. So having someone there on the sidelines is very important, and supporting those people on the sidelines is even more crucial, making sure that they have what they need also.
So on the website, servstrong.us, your choices there, one of the choices is to click to donate. That sounds easy, if you have the money.
Right.
That's something you can do, is donate to help purchase AEDs, to help provide good supplies for the EMS stations around in this. But then also, I don't think you see this a lot on a lot of websites, but you have a volunteer form that you can click. And if I click that volunteer form and put my name in, what are some of the things that you may ask me to do? Okay,
so there's a variety of things that we currently need. Currently, we need assistance with awareness about our organization. And so, that could be helpful. We might put you to work with that. We might put you to work with some fundraising. One of our board members is kind of heading up our fundraising. Her name is Shannon McGee, and she's really awesome. But we will definitely put you to work. There's a variety of ways that we might do that, but it could be right now, just in the initial stages, just awareness. We're also looking, if there's somebody interested in maybe, being a volunteer. We already have someone working on social media, but they primarily focus on Facebook. It could be, that we branch out into other areas as well with that, because we just can't be. I can't be everywhere, so there's that, but then also really putting you to work at fundraising events, physically helping us put these things together. And right now, some of the things that we're throwing out there, don't hold me to it, but we're looking at events like Corbin loved strength training and bodybuilding and things like that. And so we're looking at maybe some events around that. And then maybe some tournaments of different kinds as well. And one that keeps coming up is pickleball. You play pickleball, Tim?
I've never played, I've seen it.
It's so popular right now, and so we're looking at possibly, having like an Upper Cumberland pickleball tournament, those kinds of things. But these are in early stages. But anything we do like that, again, we're going to have help for that. So people who want to serve first responders or people who want to volunteer, we would love their help.
And again, if somebody's not in Cumberland, Fentress, or
Oh,
Putnam,
yeah.
if they're in Scott County, Morgan County, which we
Absolutely,
get to.
yes.
If you're interested in helping, you go to servstrong.us.
Yes.
It would be great to have someone representing servstrong.us in each of the counties, if not more than one.
Well, one of the things that we're most excited about right now that's still in development stages, but we could really use some help. We're looking at an Adopt a Station program where we're connecting churches with their local first responder stations. When you are, when you need a first responder, it's typically going to be the ones that are closest to you. Your community first responders are going to be, so how can we connect churches and create this relationship between churches and first responder stations? It's kind of like Adopt a School. Mm-hmm. They can help us kind of bridge some gaps there and also build relationships and maybe even, host some trainings and things like that. I feel like it could be a really cool prospect, and so that's one of the things that's on our radar right now.
All right, Chester.
Yeah.
I thank you. I'm out of questions. Can you believe that? But is there anything that I haven't covered that you want to say or that you want to tell the folks before we go here? I mean, I would urge them again. I'll just repeat. Go to corbinsdad.com. That's Chester's blog.
Yes.
And then go to servstrong.us. If you can donate, donate. If you can volunteer, there's an opportunity for you to do that there. Maybe you have ideas about how to help and how to grow.
Absolutely, we would love it. Yeah, and we are a 501c3, so it is, your gifts are tax deductible, and you can give any amount. It doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be a huge amount. I will tell you, one of the things that I enjoy is when I see someone who clicks on a monthly gift. I don't even care if it's $5 because that's something that we know we can count on coming in for our budget. So it doesn't matter the amount. And more than anything, we appreciate your prayers. And we definitely would appreciate, any volunteer or your ideas. I love that, Tim, that you brought that up because we're still gathering information. I'm going to an EMS first responder conference tomorrow, and I'll be there for a few days, and I'm going to learn because I do not know. This is all new for me. I'm leaving a university life, right, education life, to be able to focus on this as much as I can, and so we all need information and we all need to learn. And I think if you have people out there listening right now who has a great idea or says, hey, have you thought about coming at it from this perspective, I'm happy to hear it.
All right. All hearts and minds clear?
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you, Chester.
Appreciate it.
I absolutely want to thank Ben Garrett. He has edited this broadcast to make it make sense. And I want to thank Greg Bond, as always, for helping us put this together. This has been our first IHSN Spotlight conversation. We hope to have more. I want to thank Chester Goad for joining us. Just remember, corbinsdad.com is his blog, and servstrong.us is his organization where you can get involved in helping emergency medical service personnel. For all those involved in the broadcast, this is Tim Smith saying thanks for joining us, and we'll see you later.